Hello and welcome. Sometimes you will notice that you have written some code where all the statements or expressions are syntactically correct. But when you run the program shows some error and terminates abnormally. Let's take an example to understand this. I have written a small piece of the code where I have printing the first statement as program start. I'm taking two input from the user as the first number A and the second number B, and then performing the operation, the division between these two numbers, that is A division by B, and last statement, that is program ends. So as you can see here that program is correct. Every statement and every expression is syntactically correct. If I run this piece of the code at the very first time, and if I provide the first number as 10, second number as 2, so we are getting the result as 5.0 and program ends. So this is fine. Your program terminates normally. What is called normal termination? Normal termination means that your program and your every piece of the code is executing perfect and your program terminates normally. Now run this piece of the code one more time. Enter the first number as 10, enter the second number as 0. So here you will notice that we are getting some error, and it says that it is 0 division error and the program terminates abnormally. Abnormal termination means that we are not getting the output as the 13th statement that says that program ends. Okay, so in programming, where your program terminates abnormally, we call it an exception. An exception is an abnormal condition that occurs during the execution of a program and due to which the normal flow of the program's instruction may disturb. And by the Python documentation definition, if a statement or expression is syntactically correct, it may cause an error when an attempt is made to execute it. Errors detecting during the execution are called exceptions. Okay, so in a program, you can get a number of exception and types of exception. For example, here you will notice that we are getting the 0 division error. Maybe you will get type error or value error or any other type of the error. Okay, so in that case, your program will terminate abnormally. So you have to maintain and you have to write something that it should prevent the abnormal termination. So to prevent the abnormal termination, we have to handle the exception. And to handle the exception, Python provides some keywords. Keywords like try, except, finally, else, or raise. So by using these keywords, we can handle the exception into the Python. How will we handle the exception by using these keywords? Just look at the example. So first of all, we will look at what is try. Try is a block. And it says that try is a block where we put all those statements that may generate any exception. So in this particular example, you can see here that this line, that is the line number 11, can generate and can raise any exception, that is the 0 division exception. So we'll put this statement into the try block. And except is a block that will handle the exception that is raised by the try block. So remember this one, as your try block will be finished, you have to start the except block. Okay. And here you have to write some statement, means some custom message. Here you can see that it is showing the message like trace back most recent call and some statement like print result A divided by B, 0 division error and something. So you can print your specific message over here by using the except block. So here I'm writing exception is generated. And this except block is called the global exception handler. Okay, so any kind of exception, if any kind of exception is generated in your system and that is inside your try block, can be handled by except block. Okay, because it is the global exception handler. We are not mentioning here that which kind of the exception you are going to handle. So it can handle any type of the exception. So look at the output one more time. We are going to execute it. So 10. And here, if I enter zeros, the second number, so you will notice your program is not going to terminate abnormally. You are getting the output as program end. So in general, in try block, we write only those pieces of the code that we need to monitor and that can generate any exception. But you can write any number of the statement into the try block. But remember only one thing, that as your try block is finished, your except block should start. Okay, in between you cannot write anything. So look at this. I'm writing all the statement into the try block. Okay, and except over here. So except block will catch the exception that is generated by the try block, and this is the global type of the exception handler. Now what is finally? Okay, so finally is a block that will execute every time either the runtime system generates any exception or it doesn't generate any exception. Okay, so finally is a block that will execute every time. So here is the finally. So I'm writing only one statement into it, that finally block, just to show you that finally block is executing or not. So let's execute this. So here you can see it is asking first number. So first number is 10, second number is 0. So let's generate one exception. So you can see exception is generated. Okay, so this line generate exception. Exception is catched by this except block, and then exception is generated. This statement is executed. Now you can notice that finally block is also getting executed. Okay, and program end. Let's run one more time, and here we'll enter the number 10 and second number as 2, and we are not generating any exception. So this program is not generating any exception. Still the finally block is going to execute. Okay, so finally block will execute either the exception is generating or not generating. Okay, so ideally we write those piece of the code that we want to execute every time. Okay, and in finally block we write those statement that can free up the resources. Suppose in your application, in your code, you are acquiring some resources to perform some task. You are opening some file to read the data. You are opening some file to write the data, and you are opening databases to perform read write operation, and you want to close the connection, you want to close the file before closing the application. So it might be possible that your application can be terminate abnormally. So in that case, we should do one thing, that we should write those closing and free up the resources code into the finally block, because finally block will execute every time either the program terminates normally or abnormally, or exception is generated or not generated by the system. Okay, so this is the use of the finally block. Next keyword that we can use with the exception handling is else. Okay, so else part is optional into the exception handling, but we can use it. So else we use after the except block. Okay, so here I'm writing the else block. So just printing else block. Else block is a block that will execute only and only if all the statements of the try block gets executed successfully, if the exceptions are not generated into the try block. Okay, if exception is generated into the try block, then else block will be skipped. Look at this. Enter the first number 10, and you can see here that exception is not generating here, then else block is executing. Okay, similarly, let's execute one more time and generate one exception. So 10 and then 0. So here you will notice else block is skipped. Okay, so the situation where you want some piece of the code should execute if the exception is not generating, and that is for sure, so you can write into the else block. And else block is optional, but since it is with the exception handling, so we should know that where we should use the else block. Okay, so this is the try, except, finally, and else, and this is the standard way that we use the try, except, finally in exception handling. This except block is called the global exception handling, and as I said earlier, in one try block you can have multiple statement, and in which maybe one or two or three statement may generate the exception. But remember this one, only one exception will be generated at a time. What is mean by that? Suppose I'm dividing the number by 0, or here I am writing some piece of the code like I'm adding a string into the integer. So we know that this line will generate the exception, that is the exception of type error type, right? So you can have any number of statement inside it, and you can generate any number of exception inside it. Means statement can generate any number of any exception inside it, but at a time only one exception will be generated. Why? Look at this. I am writing print x. Okay, let's run this. Enter the first number, that is 10. Enter the second number, that is 2. Okay, and here you can see the result is 5.0. It is correct, but exception is generated. Okay, this line will throw the exception, that is the type error. So that's why it is generated over here, and next exception is not, next statement is not executing. In between I will write some more statement just to clarify, that is the print and after addition of str and int. Okay, so let's see at whether this line is going to execute or not. Enter the first number, enter the second number, and here you will notice that this statement is not executing. Okay, so why? Because exception is generating and raise at the line number 13. So after the exception generation, all the statement followed by the statement will be skipped. Okay, so these statement will be skipped. So you will notice only one exception is generating at a time. Okay, and that exception will be handled by the except. Why? Because this except is the global exception handler. Now what if I want to handle a specific type of the exception? So to handle the specific type of the exception into the except block, you have to mention the specific exception type name here after the except keyword. For example, I want to handle the zero division error, so I will write zero division. So this except block will handle only zero division error, except these, except this exception. If any exception generated by the program will not be handled. Look at this. Okay, so now you can notice here that result 5.0, and after that the line number 13, the statement number 13 is going to execute, that throws type error exception, but it is not handled. Why? Because we have the except block that can handle only zero exception, but before termination of the program you will notice that finally block is going to execute. Okay, so if you want to handle the specific type of the exception in your program, you have to mention the specific name over here. Okay, and with the one try block you can have any number of except block. Okay, so more than one except block you can use with the try block. So I'm going to handle the type error over here. Okay, so type error, so this will handle the type error. So type error, another except block I can write here, except, and that can handle the name error. Okay, if name error occurs, so let's run this. So here you can see, if I'm writing 12 and 3, so result is 0, and it says that type error is generated. Finally block is executing and program ends. Okay, so for one try block you can have any number of except, and this is recommended. We should go for the specific type, and suppose you know that these kind of exception can be generated into the try block, but maybe some more exception can be generated, then write the generalized except block. Okay, you can also write the generalized, and you can print a generalized message that exception is generated. Okay, and write the specific message over here, cannot divide a number by 0. Okay, so look at this. So 10, then 0, so specific message, cannot divide a number by 0. Finally block is executing and then program ends. Okay, so this is the way that you can use try, except, finally else to handle the exception. Okay, so Let's do the revision and summarize it. To handle the exception, Python gives us try, except, finally, else, and raise keywords. We put all those statements into the try block that we need to monitor that can generate any exception, and we write the except block that can handle, that can accept that exception type. Okay, and for one try block we can have any number of the except block, but as your try block will be finished, you have to start the except. As your except will be finished, then you have to write the else, and after that you will write the finally. Okay, some more combinations are valid. Inside the try, you can also write nested try, except, and finally. Inside the finally, you can also write the try, except, and finally. Okay, as I said, uh, this else is optional, so you can remove it. Okay, so as per your requirement, you can make the combinations. Okay, so this is how we handle the exception into the Python. I hope that the exception handling is clear. Still, if you have doubt, you can put your queries into the comment box. I will definitely try to answer all the queries. So that's all for in this session. In the next session, we will learn how to use the raise keyword into the exception handling. So thank you for watching. Bye-bye.